Or is it the AI?
No, it is not AI. I'm
It
trying to
could
set up the YouTube. I'm trying to set up the YouTube so that you are all set up.
have... All right, thanks. How are you?
Here in Chigali.
Oh, you're in
You know,
Chigali. Oh, yeah,
you
yeah.
know
You
it,
guys went for
yeah,
the...
and you know Chigali is 1 hour
That's five.
behind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's 5 a.m.
Be-
Oh,
We
God.
are supposed to be sleeping.
Hmm. Is the convention interesting or forum? We'll have
The
to check.
forum, yeah, the forum is very interesting. Last evening we had dinner. We were well
Uh-huh.
entertained. Mm.
That's good to know.
Mm. Rights.
Well, so which rights are you
After set,
giving us?
uh, for set up the Zoom, I will give you the hosting, and then you will be in charge.
All right. Hope the DG will be available.
Yeah, even the charity is around. I don't know about the GLT coordinator, but
But I'm here, so it's okay.
okay, you are there, so it's okay.
Oh, just need, yeah. Good morning, fellow Lions and guests. Welcome to this meeting. Is Lion Amateur online? I don't see her. Lion Charity. Lion Charity, should we expect Lion Amateur?
Yes, I think she'll be on.
Okay.
All right, let's give her about 3 minutes and then we'll start.
All right.
Our guest is already available.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this breakfast training. Thank you for keeping time. Welcome, Lions and fellow guests. Today we are celebrating the World Diabetes Day, and this year's theme is diabetes across the life stages, with part of the focus really looking at diabetes in pregnant women and other things. So agenda is short. We'll have an invocation, and then we'll go into the opening remarks, and then introduction of presenter and the presentation. Then we'll have question and answer. If the team in Kigali is available, we'll have the digit close, and then we'll continue with fellowship. Hope everyone can hear me and see the screen. I would like to request, okay, thank you. I would like to, thank you. I'd like to request our Lion from the East, Lion Kalulu, if you can please pray for us. The wise man from the East.
Good morning, everybody on call. Like I've been mentioned, my name is Lion Kalulu. Welcome into this morning's breakfast. Shall we bow our heads wherever we are so that we have a dedication? Oh Lord, we put our heads and lives in your hand for protection and guidance during this morning session when we are having the word of training in the Lions against diabetes. Please guide us so that we get the fruitful results. Take everybody's participation as serious as important. We request for your guidance and pray for your assistance. Thank you, Lord. I pray this in the name of our Lord.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, the wise man from the East. And thank you, everyone. Welcome again to this meeting. As we're aware, diabetes is one of our core activities that we really look out for. And it's one of those challenges that is ever growing. And it's very important that we as Lions have awareness of this disease so that we can be able to help our communities live better lives. So our presenter is very experienced when it comes to diabetes. All the work that he does is really around diabetes. He's called Dr. Anxious Jackson Niwaha. He's a clinician research scientist working on what we call non-communicable diseases. He works with the Medical Research Council, Uganda Virus Research Institute, and London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, Uganda Research Unit, whose base or offices are in Entebbe, but sometimes his work goes across to Kalungu and even Masaka. He has had medical training from Makerere University. He holds a PhD from the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom. Like I mentioned, most of his work has been around diabetes and is currently working on a project that has been funded by the Wellcome Trust in the United Kingdom to study more about diabetes. So please join me in welcoming our presenter, Dr. Anxious Niwaha, who is going to talk to us about lighting the path of awareness and hope. And his talk today is really going to create awareness among Lions so that we can be able to see what we can do when it comes to diabetes. Okay, I'll start sharing his slides so that he can take us through his presentation. Give me a second. Over to you, Anxious.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for the kind introduction. Good morning to you all, the Lions. It's indeed my pleasure to be with you today, this morning, and I'm more than delighted to be talking about something that I'm passionate about. So,
please confirm you can see the slides. You just tell me to move next and next.
Yes, I can see. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I thought I would start off with what's happening in the world. So if you look at this map on your left, this map from the IDF shows what will happen over the coming years. So as you can see, Sub-Saharan Africa, or Africa, as you can call it, which is in purple in the middle, will have the highest rise in the burden of diabetes, a rise of 129%. That's the only continent where diabetes will rise by more than double figures. So this is really worrying because the continent in itself, its health systems and infrastructure are not yet prepared to deal with that. For a long time, we've been battling with infectious diseases, as you all know, HIV, TB. But what's happening now is that, of course, despite the cutting of aid as far as HIV is concerned, but as of now, at least we've relatively controlled those IDs. And what's happening now is that we are beginning to see a rise of non-communicable diseases. And one of those diseases is diabetes, as I've mentioned. So this is also against the background that most people who have diabetes in Africa are not yet known. So they are out there in the communities living with diabetes, undiagnosed. And so that means even the numbers that we see now is an underestimation. The continent also has the highest premature mortality rate from diabetes. So people dying before the age of 60 years, which is not a major thing in most of those other developed countries. So these numbers really should worry everyone. And I do believe as Lions, by the end of this talk, you're enthused, you're eager to join hands and see how you can support the fight against diabetes. So next slide, please. I thought I would first level the grounds. I understand most of us maybe might have forgotten the biology of what happens when we eat food, because that's where things start from. Diabetes is a disease of food. So as you can see, this shows all the systems involved in eating. So when someone eats food in the mouth, it's chewed to make sure that it's turned into soft and smaller particles that then goes down there, someone's esophagus or the throat, all the way to the stomach, where there is some acid that even breaks it down further into the intestines, where the food is finally absorbed, and the remainder and the other stuff that are not absorbed then will be passed on in the toilet. So next slide, please. So once food is absorbed, it's not absorbed as you ate it. It would have been turned into the smallest bits that join circulation. And so the graph you're seeing here shows what happens to your glucose every time you eat. So you see, before breakfast, your glucose is low. Then when you have breakfast, you see it jumps up, but then the body brings it down if the body is working well. And then you have lunch again, it jumps up. You have dinner again, it jumps up. So that's how blood glucose oscillates in our bodies every time we eat. I thought this would be the best way to start so that at least we understand where all this is coming from. Next slide, please. So what is diabetes? It's essentially means failing to control blood glucose. As you saw in my previous graph, you saw those spikes. So if our bodies fail to bring those spikes down, and it happens for a long period of time, then that becomes diabetes. But what's then happening behind the scenes? So as you can see, whenever we eat, and then there are these red dots which show levels of glucose, and glucose increases, we have a hormone called insulin, which is produced from the pancreas, that goes on body cells and opens the door where the excess glucose enters. So when that glucose enters, then the level of blood glucose in circulation goes down. So that's why we're seeing that there will be a spike in glucose, and then the blood glucose is brought down, and when you eat again, the same thing happens. So if any of these fails to happen, if people don't have the right keys or sufficient keys to keep opening, or if it's the right key, but there is a resistance in the keyhole, then it means this glucose won't enter our bodies. And so what will happen is that you start having an increase in blood glucose levels from normal. So initially you had normal glucose. Over time, it goes above normal into that yellow range. And ultimately, if things continue worsening, then the levels raise high and high. And if you do a test, you find that your sugar levels are high and have been high for a long time. And it's very important that this blood glucose is kept out of circulation. So that's how our bodies were designed by God, because if blood glucose is not removed from circulation, it becomes a poison. It becomes a weapon that destroys us. It starts attacking the blood vessels, and starting with the smaller vessels. That's why people ultimately they start complaining of poor sight and might lose their vision. It affects the vessels in the kidneys. That's why you hear that people get diabetes and then get kidney disease. It affects vessels in our legs and the nerves that support our bodies. That's why for people who have diabetes, you start hearing them complain of burning feeling in their legs, pins and needles. They complain of a lot of it in their lower legs, and those are some of the effects that happen. And if that continues worsening, then the whole system, in other words, our bodies, get affected. Next slide, please. So I know some of you might be aware that there are all these types of diabetes. And they are many, but the major forms are two. So you normally hear of type 1 diabetes, which in our setting most times is found in young children. And basically here what happens is that our body's immune system attacks the insulin producing cells. So these people don't have enough keys, if you recall from the other cartoon that I showed. So because they don't have enough keys to open the other doors where blood should flow. So the sugar, whether the blood glucose should flow, so the sugar levels start rising. And to manage these people, you have to repress the keys. So that's why these people require insulin injections if they are to survive and not die. On the other hand, we have this other diabetes, the commonest diabetes, which mainly affects adults, but in developed countries where obesity is prevalent, it's now increasing as being seen in children. And really here what happens, we have the keys, our bodies are producing insulin, but because of resistance at the key hole, the door does not open, and so even glucose remains high. And most times these are the people who will be told you need to reduce weight, you need to exercise. There are drugs they can be started on. So at the start, really, the problem might not be not having enough insulin. But as you notice later, if this resistance persists, then it will make the pancreas tired, and that pancreas will ultimately become inefficient to produce insulin. And so this is, if some of you have had friends who have this form of diabetes or family, you realize these are people who started on drugs. The number of drugs kept increasing, and ultimately they were then started on insulin injections. But it's a complex biology, but at least those are the key things you can take from this. Next slide, please. So when I've looked at the data that comes from Uganda and tried to compare it with UK of the people who are thought to have type 2 diabetes, the one that I told you predominantly happens in adulthood, I noticed that there were differences. So if you see the blue bars, that's Uganda. The orange bars, that's the yellow-orange bars, that's UK. And on these numbers down here, what you see as 18.5, 18.5, 24.5, 25, 29. These are the numbers we use to check whether someone has obesity or overweight. And if some of you have been to the clinic or hospital, you recall they normally tell you to stand on a weighing scale, then they measure your height. This is what they are trying to find out. Are you overweight? Are you obese? So less than 18.5, these are people who are underweight. And 18.5, these are people who have normal weight BMI. And then above 25, that's overweight and obese. So you recall I've told you that type 2 diabetes, for most of its association is normally associated with overweight and obesity. But when we see these figures, I've noticed that most people in Uganda, and there's data from other countries that show that actually a good number of people in Uganda who have diabetes are not even overweight or obese. These are people you look at, they don't have a lot of fat, they are normal weight BMI, sometimes relatively young. Unlike when you look at the UK data, and even when you are in those hospitals in the UK, and even United States and other developed countries, the people who have type 2 diabetes, most of them will be overweight and will be obese. So that then begs the question of what could be happening. Why people in Uganda and other African countries developing diabetes at low weight and at a relatively young age compared to those in developed countries. So this is very important to understand, because in our communities, most people might think, well, these are normal diseases of people who are rich, who don't work, who have a lot of fat. But the figures I'm showing you now should make us all pause and think about diabetes are different. Next slide, please. So fat or excess fat is not the only cause that might make us develop diabetes. As you can see, there are people who might, as you recall from the previous graph, they have normal weight BMI, but they've added some fat around their waist. So they are not adding a lot of fat in other parts, but increasing, you see that all of a sudden you require your tailor to adjust the waist of your trousers, for the ladies, of the skirts. Things start not fitting. Where the belt, you start shifting it from a point where it was low, so to a higher point, meaning that some people don't necessarily store fat in other places. At times, this fat accumulates around the waist. And that's dangerous fat, because if it is excessive, then it starts spilling into some of the other important organs that are involved in controlling glucose, like liver and other places. But fat is not the only important thing. There are other things. So next slide, please. Yeah, so when you look at that, this is muscle, so skeletal muscle. So the muscle is where the largest percentage of the glucose that you eat is deposited. So that's the black dot you're seeing. And for some people, and with aging, we start losing this muscle. The muscle starts reducing in size, and then when it starts reducing in size and its quality, fat starts accumulating in it. That's why you see initially it was black, but now we see it has become smaller, and then we see white things in it. So then that also puts someone at risk. And it's the reason why one of the reasons why someone might be lean, and they may not necessarily have too much fat, but their muscle mass, the amount of muscle they have, is low. So every time you eat, you may not have where to store the glucose. If most of you recall, for those who grew up in villages, you remember the granaries, where at the end of the season, when you have plenty of food, we would store them in the granaries. So imagine you harvest too much and only have one granary. It means it will overflow. So if now excess food, excess glucose, which was supposed to be stored in the good fat under the skin, becomes too much, then that excess starts spilling either into the organs, as you saw around the waist circumference, or into the muscles. And then this also affects your bodies and puts you at a risk of diabetes. I thought that is very important to understand, because at times when people have been told or advised, the focus tends to be around make sure you lose weight, and there's not enough emphasis on the muscle. Yet we all know, we all have grandparents, we have parents who you notice that when they age, you tend to see that their muscle has reduced. And so a very important organ that is not normally appreciated. Next slide, please. So just at one bit at a time, not to make sure we don't overcrowd. Let's start with one. So what should the lions do? One, as I've told you, both muscle, fat are important. So we need to stay active. Cycle, walk. Our bodies were generally created to walk, and that's one of the only ways we can even improve beyond reducing some weight. That's one of the ways you can improve your muscle quality to make sure that it is active. You know what you don't use, you lose. So if you don't keep your muscles active, then they start degenerating or they start losing their quality, and eventually then it puts you at risk of all these diseases. Next. So sitting, that sedentary lifestyle is a big thing, because sitting does not engage muscle, sitting in screen time. So one of the ways that the lions can keep themselves in shape is to try and reduce that. At office, there are all these days modified desk, stand, sit, take steps. There are studies that have shown that if at least you make 7,000 steps every day, your risk for some of these diseases reduces. So it's about breaking that pattern. So sitting puts you at an increased risk. So I understand for some of us who have jobs that demand sitting behind screens, we should maybe start thinking about the things we can do to reduce that risk. Next. And take care of your pancreas. So as I mentioned earlier, the pancreas is the only organ, at least as I know of, that produces the other keys which help us open doors so that we remove the glucose out of circulation. So every time you eat, every time you snack, you cause it to work. So if you keep it worked up every other time, you're essentially pressing a big demand on it. And so there's something that we can pick from here. Our bodies were not designed to eat every other time. That's why you see when you eat, the excess is stored. So it doesn't help you in any way. So if you eat too much, the excess will be stored. So a point reaches where now, as I mentioned, your granaries get filled up and then you start having overflow. But also what's happening is that the pancreas is being pushed to work and work. So the number of eating times, it doesn't matter whether it's a snack, as long as it will be turned into glucose and other nutrients at the end of that meal. It puts your pancreas on pressure to work. And sometimes we eat throughout the day, snacking a bit, and then those late night dinners, and at times when we stay out, for some of us, there are those things we eat throughout the night. So you can imagine where the pancreas has to be pushed to be producing insulin every time you throw in something. So that's something which you should at least understand if you forget all the other things. This is what you should take home with you, that every time you eat snack, as long as it's something that will raise your sugar levels, the pancreas, which you should hold dearly because it's one of those organs where it might, when it's injured, when it gets tired, to replace it, you might need insulin. Or these days in developed countries, they are now thinking of ways to replace the cells that produce insulin, but we are still far from that a bit. There's still a lot of research ongoing, so it's better we produce this engine that is our only source of insulin. And the insulin hormone, as I told you, without it, eating would be useless because then food would not be turned into useful, into something to use for our bodies. Next slide, next, rather. So, and we should screen for diabetes. The only way we can know where we stand is by screening. There are simple tests that we can undertake. Next slide, which I think might be my final slide. Then awareness. If the Lions should join us and raise this awareness, you have a big community that you can reach out to beyond what some of us do who do this research. So one of the contributions that you can do is improve awareness of diabetes. Most people in our communities, by the way, even the educated and the big people, are not really aware of diabetes. And the second point is on policy. So most of you might have some influence as far as policy is concerned, and you can help us work on foods that we import that have unnecessary ultra-processed sugars, which have deleterious effects. So before, for example, if someone ate cassava, part of that cassava is fiber and other things. So not all the cassava you've eaten will be absorbed. But imagine the foods that have been processed and the fiber is taken out. It means you eat a lot of it, and most of what you eat will be absorbed. So that's why ultra-processed foods are dangerous. You don't get satisfied easily, just keep eating and eating. And so one of the areas that the Lions can help us with is policies around these foods. Maybe most of these ultra-processed foods that are sold, they should have something to say that this food is ultra-processed. It will increase maybe a risk of developing diabetes if you eat it inappropriately. Then, as you saw in my slides, I talked about exercising and all that, but where do you exercise from in Kampala, in other places of Uganda? Perhaps maybe you can pick a leaf from Kigali. I've not been there, but I know I see pictures that show that this place has walkways, cycling path, where someone can safely engage in activity. So when we are designing and planning for Kampala, for example, as you all know, with even the recent like that channel they are building on, maybe there should even be more emphasis for some of you who have power and influence to say, this is how we want our roads designed. We need to consider people who want to walk to work, people who want to cycle to work. These are things which you find in developed countries. So sometimes disappointed in our politicians because they visit Europe, they visit UK, and you find these things there, but it makes me feel bad that when I come back home, you don't see these things, and yet you know that the people in influence have visited these places and not picked a leaf. So the other is health. So in terms of health, the Lions can support health. At times, the supplies of even managing diabetes are not as easy to access as we think, but also we need centers. One of the my dreams, for example, would be to at least, let's say in Uganda, have regional centers of excellence for diabetes, undertaking research and taking care. These are things you see in developed countries when you go there. They tie research and clinical work because they have understood that it's research that improves how they manage. We don't understand fully everything. So supporting local research, most of the engagements for some of you who are on social media who read a lot, you notice that most of the research funded, by the way, in those developed countries is by foundations, by groups like the Lions. They fund research, diabetes research, more than even their governments. Talk of breakthrough type 1D, talk of these other foundations. I can even include in Wellcome Trust that funds my research. It's in UK, but you can imagine they fund me to do research that is not even in the UK. So can we think of funding local research so that in the event that funds are cut off, there is already a pool where some research can be kept on going. And this will inform how we manage people without necessarily applying what has been researched in those countries. As you saw from my slides, we seem to have a difference in how diabetes manifests in these countries here. Next slide. So, and supporting diabetes national programs. So if there are diabetes prevention programs that can be run in this country and other neighboring countries that involve targeting prevention, because prevention is the best cure, and the earlier you start, the better. So things like early screening, diet, and if we can come up with all these, or start a diabetes national program that can try and target all these things, I think that's one area where we are still lacking. These programs were started and are running in some of those countries that I've mentioned. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Anxious, for that detailed and easy to understand presentation. Before we go into question and answer, I would like to request our district coordinator on diabetes, Lion Dr. Martin, to tell us what we are doing, you want us to do as the district, or some guidance, and then we'll move into the question and answer. Please put your questions into the chat, and then we'll move into this. Yes, Dr. Martin, over
Thank
to you.
you. Thank you very much. Good morning, Lions, and good morning, Dr. Nuaha, and thank you very much for the presentation. I'm glad to say that we, as the various Lions clubs of Uganda, of District 411B, are already doing a lot of the things that will impact either people who have diabetes or people who are trying to prevent diabetes and generally trying to do a better job with staying healthier. So one of the things that you'd have noticed if on the Lions groups is that a lot of clubs are doing Lions walks. This is something that began, I think, more strongly last year and has continued into this year. Lions Club, I think of Arua is doing the same. Lions Club of Entebbe has been doing walks. Lions Club of Nsambia has been doing aerobic exercises. So these are the various things that as an individual at a Lions Club, we can keep doing and ensuring that we're doing a lot better. We had some talks about nutrition, about foods, and we hope that this is something that we will continue. So the focus this year is on things that are sustainable, things that every person can do, not necessarily something that we want, yes, to create awareness, but at the same time, we want to keep that momentum going. We want to keep the activities going. We want to make sure that people in their individual clubs, people in their homes eventually are able to do this over a long period of time and over a sustainable period of time. So that has really been the focus this year. Thank you, Shimara.
Thank you so much, Lion Amata. So we're now going to question and answer, but you can see that some of the things that are actually causing us problems are the things we're adopting. Back in the day, children would move by walking to school. These days, most of it is around vans and buses and all. Then we have gone into buying them snacks over the counter and even ordering the food that they need to eat, really raising their sugars all the time. The foods we're eating are now super processed compared to the natural cassava that we used to have straight from the garden to the pan. These days, it's in the supermarket, processed. The phones that we love to have are actually causing us a danger because we do a lot of sitting. The TVs that we have, a lot of sitting. So the children are also not out there playing, but sitting most of the time. So there's really a lot that we can do within our own homes, even before we go outside to the community. We'll now go over to the questions. Anyone has a question, please put your hand up. So I see in the comments, the team that is in Kigali confirming that yes, the place is well designed with walkways. It's also clean and all that. So the grass is greener on the other side. What can we do for our own here in Uganda? Yes, members. Unless would want to say like that Dr. Anxious' presentation was very clear, that we have no questions. Any comments from anyone? So maybe Anxious, if you could really give us more light on lean diabetes. So one of the challenges the clinicians will face seeing this very small, thin, when it comes to diabetes, people are not thinking about the thin person. And then the thin person suddenly collapses, and then people start wondering. If you can give us more light on that lean or phenotype so that Lions can understand. Over to you, Anxious.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. As you saw in my slides, a good number of people who have diabetes in Uganda will be lean. There will not be people who are obese, who are overweight. So this means that clinicians in regions everywhere should be concerned, especially when people present to their hospitals, to the OPD, to always think about doing a diabetes test. What has happened is that most of these people are not easily picked up because in these places, no one thinks about diabetes when a small person or someone who is not overweight shows up and they are complaining that I feel I'm weak, I don't feel well, so they can do all other tests and don't think of diabetes. So this person takes a long time before someone picks them up. So that's why I was saying that for clinicians and maybe the awareness, of course, cuts across both in our communities, but also for our doctors and clinicians in those places to think that the things they should know, that the things that we read in books which were written from these developed countries might not necessarily apply here. So, and you're right to say that until a person collapses. So that's what we should try and avoid. So in our awareness, it should be part of this message to say, not diabetes is not for only the obese and overweight. Even that in people should watch out and try and check. Yeah.
Okay,
And
thank you.
yeah.
I see a hand from Lion Prosper. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I was actually trying to write the question in the chat, but now that you have given me a chance, let me ask. I want to thank the doctor for that elaborate discussion. Now, I'm glad he is a researcher. Some of us have relatives, parents, that is to say, who are diabetic. We also have lifestyle in terms of what we do and limited walks we do in a day. I wanted him to compare the risk according to research. What's the risk of you having a relative, a parent, so to say, who is diabetic compared to lifestyle? What puts us more on risk by comparison? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm glad someone has asked it. So by design, by nature, when we are born, the risk of diabetes, like other traits or like other features a person has, whether it's height, there are things we inherit. So you inherit certain things. So if, for example, there is a family history of diabetes in when you either in your siblings or parents, if that's there, there's a possibility that there is that risk, but it does not necessarily mean that everyone who has history of diabetes in family will develop diabetes. And we've not yet started doing like genetic testing for screening diabetes and all that. And there are really very few cases where one change in genetics that causes diabetes in parents puts a child or a sibling causes them to have diabetes. But what happens is that you have a disadvantage if that risk is there. And then your lifestyle is what unmasks, or it's what throws you off the edge. So I can give an example. I mentioned the pancreas, if you recall. I mentioned that it's the one that produces insulin. So imagine you're born with some factors that make the pancreas lazy and make the pancreas not produce a lot of insulin when it's called upon. Yeah, so if you can put me back to that key. Yeah, so imagine you're born with a pancreas that when you take glucose, it does not produce many insulin molecules like this one. And then you don't watch out on your eating habits and weight. So as I mentioned, you notice that a person who has, let's say, small pancreas compared to one who has a large pancreas, they might, even if they had the same lifestyle, one who had a smaller pancreas might develop, if the lifestyle is poor in both of them, might develop diabetes faster. So maybe the analogy I can use is the one of cars. So if you have a Vitz and then another person has a Range Rover, so the difference is in engine sizes. If you start off on a slope without starting that engine, both cars will move easily down the slope. And when you reach a leveled ground and you start adding, let's say you add 500 kilograms to each of these cars and you start the engine, they might move, but you'll notice that the Vitz, you have to overplace the accelerator to try and push it. Whereas one with the Range Rover, because of the engine size, they will still sail smoothly. And then by the time you reach, let's say, a hill, that's where now the difference will manifest. So what I'm trying to say is that we might be born with differences in our pancreas, or there might be differences or risk that we inherently got from family. But what we throw ourselves most times is the lifestyle aspect. It's a difficult thing to explain, but I hope you've picked something. Ultimately, lifestyle becomes more important, especially for type 2 diabetes, because it's one aspect that is in your control. So you can't change your genetic makeup or the family in which you are born, but you have something you can change in how you live and in how you eat and exercise.
Okay, thank you. Lion Gabriel, please go ahead and
Thank
ask
you
your
so
question.
much.
Over to you, Lion Gabriel lad. Please unmute and ask your question.
Okay, Lance. Good morning, fellow Lions, and thank you, Lion Celebia and our presenter today. I have lots of questions on the chat, but the question I wanted to ask is, does fasting help in reversing diabetes, type 2, or it doesn't? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are really good questions. I'm really impressed by the level of understanding of some of the pertinent issues that influence diabetes. So fasting, as you all know it, so to just break it down a bit, our forefathers, all thousands of years ago, you knew they were hunters and gatherers. So they never used to eat as often. Once in a while, they will go out, hunt, kill an animal, bring it and eat. And they never used to eat as often as we do in the present age until the modern agriculturists started this whole shifting in making sure that food is always available, which is a good thing to do. But then what happened is, because now food became easily accessible as they would grow and then store, they started now shifting from less eating to frequent eating. So some started with you eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner. As times changed, even people eat pre-breakfast. They also eat in between breakfast and lunch, then even snack a bit between lunch and dinner. And some people even have a late night snack. Really lifestyle habits that cause the pancreas to work. As I mentioned before, every time you eat, you are calling upon the pancreas to start working. So imagine you have this pancreas that, as I mentioned in my previous correspondence, that is small. It's not endowed with that capacity. So you outwork it. So what fasting means essentially is, and there are several modes of fasting. There are people who wake up, skip breakfast, and their first meal of the day is lunch. There are people who just make sure that they don't eat or snack in between breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Others do one meal a day. There are also spiritual fasting where people go either once a day on water fasting or even more days. So what's happening in our bodies when you are not eating food, you force this body to embark on the food you had stored in form of fat and elsewhere. So what happens is that when you cut off the supply, the body will now shift to fat stores, and so fat is broken down, and that in a way helps in reducing the excessive fat, but it's also very important because it gives time for the pancreas to heal, or to rest a bit. And so there are many good advantages in fasting, and it's a broad topic which I don't think I can explain in this short time, but I just wanted to explain the biology behind fasting, and once maybe you understand what's happening behind the fasting, then it will be easy for you to pick the form you can go with. But for some people, you need to do like those people do prolonged fasting. It has to be done with the support, because not fasting can be detrimental if not done, especially the prolonged fasting without food. You need to make sure that maybe your body has that capacity to sustain things.
Okay, so someone asked in the chat, is pre-diabetes
For
there?
old people and the kids.
Okay, so someone asked, is pre-diabetes there, and what are the early signs and symptoms for one to watch out? Plus, how often should I screen for diabetes?
Yeah, before diabetes becomes diabetes, there's that, I showed that figure where there's that stage between normal and pre-diabetes. Yeah, so pre-diabetes is there, and it's the pool of people who finally become diabetic. Most of them come from, they've had this pre-diabetes, they have raised blood glucose for a long time, and it just shows that their pancreas is already failing in that stage, either because this person has added some weight and causing the pancreas to work. It's a stage where you can do much to try and reverse things, because the effects of the high blood sugars have not yet been detrimental. So yes, pre-diabetes is there. Very many people will be in that stage. That's why I mentioned that it's very important to at least do a screen, go for diabetes screening. So if you do the diabetes screening, they will tell you that you are not diabetic, but your sugar seems to be high, and then you start from there. But even for people who are in the normal also has ranges. So even in the normal, don't wait. You can be in the normal, but you are in the normal because your pancreas is working hard to keep things. And sooner or later, if you don't change something, you will fall off the cliff. I hope that makes sense.
So how often should they check?
So for people who are normal, really, I can say once, especially for the once, if you checked your sugar, and this really depends on your lifestyle again, but if you checked your sugar at least once every year, that can help you align things. And then for those who are keen on their health, this is something you can do twice a year to try and check. So if you are in the pre-diabetes level, let's say, you'd want to do it slightly, let's say 2 times. As you engage in lifestyle changes, you check and see how has my blood sugar changed.
Okay. So Lion Nkalubo has a friend who is diabetic, and when he gets weak, he takes a Coke, and he's also wondering why diabetic people are discouraged from taking surgery.
It's because diabetes, the diabetic state, as I mentioned, high sugars affect wound healing. So you remember I said that they affect the vessels, they affect the wires, the nervous system. So imagine, and that's why you see some people when they get wounds, they end up being amputated. The wound just doesn't heal. So some of the things that surgeons want to deal with before major surgeries, they always try to make sure that this person's blood sugar levels are controlled, to just make sure that the wound heals. Otherwise, you can go for surgery, the surgery goes well. Because of poor wound healing, you end up getting infection on the wound, and you might die from the wound infection and infection-related things, and from even the surgery. So and regarding the Coke, that means the friend who is diabetic, it's because either they've taken they might be using drugs like insulin injections that cause them to lower their glucose high. So these injections that are given to people who can't make enough insulin, they are not the natural form. So the way our bodies were made is that our bodies respond to the amount of glucose to produce insulin. But imagine you are introducing this external insulin without knowing the level of glucose you have in your body. So most likely, you might push the little glucose you have to reduce to abnormal levels. And then that's why this person becomes weak. And when they take some sugar, they become better. So it's just poor management, a bit of their habits. So I would recommend that this friend of yours is taught about the timing of drugs, the eating, and these are people who would respond to a little bit frequent monitoring of their sugar levels to try and see how and what times the sugar tends to be fine, and then you adjust your lifestyle and the timing of your insulin injections. And normally for people on insulin injections, you take it, and it also depends on the type of insulin injection. Some people take it when they're going to eat, but imagine you take it before eating and then you delay having food. So it can kill you, yet it's supposed to sustain your life.
Maybe you also comment on herbal medication and Chinese medication, because those are some of the things that are being advertised. And of course, people who are diabetic are taking them.
Yeah, I've not researched them. The appropriate thing would be to undertake these studies, and so I can't under or rub them off. We know that drugs have come from herbs. It's just that we've not done a good job in embedding such in studies. So if we wanted to help people, would undertake good studies and study like what is done for other drugs to finally have something tangible to say. So because I've not studied them and no one else has, this thing of try and error can be detrimental. So the right thing I can say is it's possible they might have glucose lowering effects. We just need to study them and know the mechanism of action, know the dosing. So those are things which you can only know once you've undertaken research.
Lion Kalulu, you had your hand up at one point. Do you still have your question?
Yes, I was trying to imagine that I got him correctly when in the beginning he said that there is an anticipation of rise in diabetes in sub-Sahara region. Aware that most of these conditions are as a result of genetic and lifestyle. What makes it difficult that this region may not achieve the desired goals of reducing the prevalence of diabetes in that region? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Again, I think these numbers are modeled, so they are based on what people have been observing over time. So some of the reasons why the continent will be hit hardest if we don't do something about it is one, we might be inherently by nature of the environment we are in, it's possible that there are things in the continent that will put us at a risk. So one of the things I can maybe say is things like undernutrition and infection. So imagine a pregnant woman not having sufficient nutrition during pregnancy. That means the child who is growing inside her womb might face restriction in terms of how much their organs grow, and that might include even the pancreas. So some of those things are important, but although we've done a good job in trying to improve and reduce child mortality, undernutrition of all sorts in this region is still high. We still have a lot of infections around, and the region is still undergoing development. So some of the things that are happening, it's rapid undergoing development. So a rapid change in diets, a rapid change in motorized vehicles without proper planning. Whereas when you go to those developed countries, you notice that they are developed countries having all sorts of infrastructure, but their people have planned these things well. They are way ahead of the curve. They were where we are, and they are already doing something about it. So their prevalence or burden of diabetes might not increase further. It's us who start from a low number that will eventually have a high number, and that's why it's very important at this point that while urbanization, for example, is happening, while foods are being imported, can we do more prevention, do something about the infrastructure now, rather than wait and then start working backwards? And maybe the last point will be that some of it might be because there are very many people out there, as I mentioned, who have diabetes that we don't know of, and maybe that also contributes to the high numbers. So maybe we have to first start by mopping our house, but also planning and being ready, start tackling things from the start rather than wait and start firefighting. I don't know whether that helps answer the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Lion Jeb is wondering if people should be amputated or should vascular surgery be
I
done?
think it depends on the severity. So it might be maybe the vessel is still patent. It has not yet gone to the extreme, but I don't think you can reverse a vessel that has already, let's say, especially if now sepsis, because what happens when blood supply is totally cut off and this is not picked early, it now moves beyond just the vessel, the tissues, the muscle and the fat peripheral to that cut off, they start rotting. So imagine the muscle and the bones are already infected, and you have nothing to save. So it depends on when, and this is why it's important to try and make sure people who are out there, they are taught how to manage their feet, because as we've said, since it's a disease that affects vessels, nerves, and everything, it's better maybe we educate people, and if they get a small wound, not to underestimate it, they should start managing it earlier. But unfortunately, as you know, that our healthcare system is not the best. Imagine this person is somewhere where there are not even good diabetes doctors, or even people have dealt with these things. So by the time maybe they are seen, it will be too late.
Okay, so we're slowly running out of time. We'll take our last two questions before we invite the DG. So Catherine from Soroti is asking, she has a patient who got a kidney problem, but the doctor managing says it could have been because of the drugs. How true is that?
I can't comment on that because even diabetes causes the kidney. So I don't know which is the chicken and the egg. The drugs, so the drugs, if they are being given by trained doctors, they will know that all drugs, not just even in people with diabetes, the dose is tailored to one's capacity to excrete the drug products that might be toxic. And that's why sometimes we ask you, can you please check your kidneys, because we want to know whether your kidneys are working well, and we titrate that dose depending on how good your kidney is. So I don't know whether it's the diabetes, it's the drug. Of course, if you don't titrate the dosage depending on one's capacity, then it can affect, but that does not mean that diabetes didn't affect the kidney. In the first place, were they seeing the right doctor? Did they go to the right hospital? So those are some of the things which I can't commit to, and that can also maybe cause people to have to be biased. Yet these drugs are okay. So it's about, like any drug, imagine if you took a high dose of even Panadol, it's not good. So it's something really which you can't point out what caused it.
Okay, thank you. And the last one, yes, Lion Noah Poya. I've seen people whose pancreas has been removed. So how do they survive? And also give some light on how diabetes affects them.
Yeah, so at the start I said if the blood glucose levels are not controlled, they affect the vessels, and they start with the smallest vessels, which happen to be in the eyes. So that's how why people who have diabetes will have eye problems if their diabetes is not managed. If the pancreas is removed, most likely this person is on treatment, replacing either an insulin injection or some other form, but no one can survive without insulin producing cells which are in the pancreas. Either you replace the insulin or at times not all the pancreas is removed. But it's a very good question and very relevant.
Thank you so much, Anxious, for enlightening us. I think as Lions, we know what we're supposed to be doing and where. Creating awareness for those who have all the guns around policy, please. The agriculturalists, the engineers, the health experts, those with money, please let's come together and see that we deal with this issue in every aspect that we need. As you can see, it's really collective effort that needs a multi-sectoral approach. It's not just one bit. Each and every one of us, wherever we are, needs to do something. I would like to call upon our DG to give us a highlight of what's happening in Kigali and what else we need to do. Lion Alentush, Naturinda.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kush, and thank you everyone who has made this session happen. I want to thank our doctor presenter, Dr. Anxious, for really giving us a very elaborative presentation. Dr. Mate, thank you so much for being on the call this morning, and the JLT team as a whole. Thank you very much for always getting us people to take us through these causes that we Lions are called to contribute to positively. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank all the Lions clubs who are involved in taking on this month being a diabetes month and doing something in the communities, but also not forgetting ourselves, taking care of ourselves. Taking the first 3 of stay active, reduce screen time, take care of your pancreas. I think that is something I may be in control of as me. Kigali, I'm sitting at a window. It is broad daylight. You notice that most of the Kigali people woke up late because you are now ahead of us. The forum is going great, and the trainings are really many, and members who are attending them, members who have come to this All Africa Forum will not remain the same because every session is engaging and rich in information. and helping us to live better lives as we serve our communities, and giving us knowledge, of course, of how to do better as lions. I want to really take this opportunity to thank all those who are doing great in their different clubs. I had an exercise to leave with you that since we are all commemorating the month of diabetes, I would like each of you to take the word diabetes, use those letters to write something in the chat that is positive. Maybe it could be a food, a fruit. And I know such sessions, some people sit with their colleagues on the same gadget. You can turn to your colleague, their spouses who sit together. Tell them a word that may mean something for you this month under diabetes as a topic. We could name fruits. If I take a letter like D, those from Uganda, you know, Dodo does us good. And I know some nutritionists in the house would advise us to take more greens than the other. And the other letters, B, I could say Irish if Leos are in the house. Use that, send to your groups, and let us have our groups busy promoting awareness around this, taking the walks, engaging in everything that we plan to do. I see we must stop, and I want to wish you the best of the day. Those in Kigali, please be there for the sessions that you've been invited for so that you take knowledge home. Thank you, our team. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed day.
Thank you so much, our DG. Thank you to our presenter. Thank you to the Lions and guests that have been able to attend. Thank you to our district coordinator and our GLT coordinator and team. Thank you so much. Hope we become really aware of what diabetes is about and be able to support our communities get better. Thank you, members. We will now continue with fellowship. You can turn on your videos and say hello to each other. Greet each other from wherever you are as we end, because it's time for us to go and do other things. You can see the DG all smart.
A good morning to you all. So please tell each other nice words. You can say my dodo, my Irish. Use the words.
My exercise.
My dragon fruit.
My exercises are done. My tea trees. So stay blessed
My
and
dragon
cheer
fruit,
each other. Cheer everyone you meet using positive words. I must now start getting to go. Thank you, Coach. I leave you the
Thank you
table.
all. Thank you. I see Bernard is diabetic walking. Enjoy. You're muted. We don't hear.
I'm even diabetic since the last 7 years.
You're diabetic walking, we can see.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important to really stay active. True.
Tell us what is happening in your clubs and go on the groups and say something. Awake everyone to get out and do something.
Yeah, that's true.
Lioness Club Seta, we are here doing the diabetes run.
Good, active.
Say hi to the
Seta
Lion.
and Mukono, we are on the diabetes run here.
That's very Say hi to them, send our regards.
I see, Lion Perez, you're supposed to be active, but you're seated in a car.
Let us park the cars today and take a walk.
We should be taking a walk.
Wish the DG the best in the all Africa. I'm seeing the vibe in Kigali. I'm missing a lot.
Yeah. Next time. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll share the slides on the group so that people can get in touch with what else could have been missed. Thank you all and have a good Sunday. It's raining in Masaka at least. I don't know about the rest of the country.